This is Gemara Baba Basra, Daf Lamid Vav, and we're holding in the very bottom of Lamid Hey Amid Beis, of 5 lines from the bottom. Omar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, teaches Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, Yisrael haba machmas akom harei hu ke'akom. If a yid comes and is living in a piece of property through getting it from a guy, a Jew bought a piece of land from a guy that prior belonged to a Yid. Hareu ke'akum is the same as an akum. What does that mean? 3 lines on the bottom. Ma akum in the chazaka elu bishtar. Av yisrael ba machzakum in the chazaka elu bishtar. So teaches Rav Yehuda Marav, in this unique scenario, the Yid can live there for many, many years. That will not create a chazakah. Usually, after 3 years, you do not need to hold on to your stars. We've seen so many times. But if you bought a field from a guy, which previously was owned by a Yid, just like the guy himself could live there for 10 years, and the only way that he'd be able to prove his ownership is via a star, says Rav Yehuda Marav, the same thing is by the Yid that buys it from him. But Amar Rava, the Amar Yisrael. But if the Yid says, as we turn over to Lamid Vav Amid Aleph, if the Yid says, L'didi Amar Li Akom Deminach Zavna. But if the Yid comes along and the Yid claims, guess what? The guy told me that he bought the land from you. Meaning, not that it was stolen, not that he just took it, but rather he purchased it, then he is believed. Then Mehemen, as the top Rashbam explains, the reason being that Rav is saying that when Rav Yehuda, when Rav Yehuda Marav originally said that he has the same din as a guy, it's not going to be if someone says he bought it from a guy. The reason being because if the guy actually said it to him, there's no reason for him to lie, and therefore he has a good nemanis on such a statement. Asks the Gemara, Mika Midi, I don't understand. Is there such a thing? Teilu akamamar loy mehemin. Vilu amar Yisrael mishmei da'akam mehemin. Says the Gemara, the obvious kasha, that this is very difficult to understand. If the guy himself were to say this, he has no nemanis. Like we just said, the guy has to keep his shar. And he could be there for many years, doesn't make a difference. But says the Gemara, all of a sudden, if the Yid said that the guy told this to me, then he's going to have a credibility. How could that be? Ela Rava, as follows. I Amar Yisrael kami didi zavna akom minach v'zavna nihali then mehamin. Says Rava, no, you missed a step. If the Yid is claiming, I saw the guy buy it from you originally, and then now I bought it from the guy, then he is believed. Why? Because he could have said, I bought it directly from the Yid, and I'm here the years of a chazakah, and he would have been believed like every chazakah. So if he says, I saw the guy buy it from the Yid, he also is believed in that scenario. V'amar Rav Yehuda, continues the Gemara, 8 lines down, Lamed Vav Amar Aleph, first word on the line is Ana, teaches Rav Yehuda, Hayman Dinakin Miglav Etovla, one who takes these items, the rope and the other items to cut down the produce. V'amar Ezel Igzira L'Dikla Deplanya, I'm going to go and cut down Plini's palm tree. Why? Because I bought it from him. Mehemen, he's believed. Why? As we've already seen, No one has the chutzpah to just pull up into someone else's backyard and start cutting down his tree unless it's emes. Must be if he's doing such, he's really telling the truth. V'amar Rav Yehuda, continues the Gemara. Haiman de'asik, meguda de'aruda ulvar. One who has a chazaka on a piece of land, but what's unique about this piece of land, it's meguda de'aruda ulvar. It's outside of a aguda de'aruda, a wild animal wall. This is a fence. This is a piece of land outside the fence that they would grow, some small crop there. Why? That if any animals were to come, they would eat this and not come into the person's field. Instead of trying to build a wall to prevent the animals, they did something easier. Put the food outside, let the animals have what to eat, and then they're not going to come past this small wall. So what if someone has a chazaka on that little piece of land? Says the Gemara, "Lo have chazaka my taima." Amar calls the zera nami arude achlilei. You know why? Because the owner could say everything I planted there was for the animals to eat. So I figured, why should I protest? I should make a machav. You eat it if the animals eat it. No. What's the difference? So you being there doesn't create a chazaka. Similarly, V'amar Rav Yehuda achla arla in a chazaka. If someone eats arla fruit, someone harvests fruits during the first 3 years, it says, well, not a chazaka. Again, for the same reason, the owner himself can't benefit from it. So he says, what? Because you're coming and taking something that's ulcer, I should make a macha? Who cares? A similar braysa, Einoi chazaka, you cannot create a chazaka by eating something which is ulcer. Amar Rav Yosef, Semak, in the middle of the Amar, the first one in line is Amar Rav Yosef. Similarly, Ochla shachas, the aftergrowth, the unripe grain, lo have chazaka. Amar Rava, b'ivitzavar mechuza, kaimi. But says Rava, but if this is in the city of Mechuza, have chazaka, then it is a chazaka, because over there, this ripe grain, they do used to cut down. Amar Rav Nachman, tafticha, says Rav Nachman, broken up karka, lo have chazaka. Because again, karka that's all full of cracks and not really growing good stuff, says Rav Nachman, the owner doesn't really care. Again, all of these items are the same yisoid. That by now we understand that the whole understanding of a chazaka is that the owner saw and he didn't protest. But it has to be something that the owner would have protested. It has to be something that has some level of usage for the owner. But this unripe grain, this forbidden fruits, this land that's utilized for animals, etc., the owner just lets it be, and therefore it's not a chazaka. And similarly, apekura v'ayil kura, the person living there planted a core of seed and he harvested a core of produce, meaning that the crop was a horrible crop. It didn't get much more than the seed that was planted. It didn't get any more than the seed that was planted. And finally, the people of Reish Galusa, they cannot make chazaka. We cannot make chazaka in their land. Why? Because they were strong people, and therefore no one's ever going to protest against them. They're not going to protest against someone else, and therefore they're totally excluded from all the dinim of chazaka. So after many, many blat dealing with all the dinim of chazaka, cheskas gimel shanim, cheskas habatim, we now go to the next part of the Mishnah. What was the next part of the Mishnah? That was avodim. That avodim, slaves, have a similar din. Says the Gemara and explains, avodim, yesh lahem chazaka. Is that true? How can you tell me that avodim, if I own an Eved for 3 years, it's considered a proof that I own the Eved? Wait, Reish Lakish taught us that goydrais, animals, anything that is a movable type of entity, cannot have a chazaka, because the fact that they're here doesn't prove anything because they move around. So how can an Eved have a chazaka? So Amar Rava explains, Ein lo chazaka la'alter, aval yesh chazaka la'achar gimel shanim. Says Rava, you're right. There's no chazaka right away, but there'll be a chazaka after 3 years. Meaning, when Reish Lakish said Agoidres in them chazaka, that just means that if you have them right away, it doesn't prove anything. But after 3 years, it would prove. And Amar Rava, and Rava explains, and by Akata and Mutal Ba'arisa Yeshav Chazaka Alter, a child, a baby in a cradle, does have a chazaka right away. Just like an item which is not movable, there's a din of chazaka. If I have a car, if I have my watch, there's a din of chazaka says that something that's in my possession is mine. Kol mashadachas yad adam shalayu. It's his. So therefore, you don't need a chazaka. Similarly, a katan amuto ba'arisa. Similarly, an infant lying in the cradle will have the same din. The chiddush of Reish Lakish just was that movable items don't have chazaka, meaning in contrast to immediate ownership, in contrast to non-movable items. But says Rava, Reish Lakish will agree, you'll have a chazaka, cheskes gimel shanim, like karka. Says Mar Pshita that what a baby has a din of non-movable items. Says the Gemara, the baby has a mother, and the baby has a mother who works in the house. So maybe the mother brought the baby there and forgot the child there. And therefore, the fact that I now have this baby in my house in the cradle doesn't prove anything. Kamash Malan, says the Gemara, mommy doesn't forget the child. Again, one might ask, Waze reminds people to take their babies out of the car. It's Keneged a Gemara. Okay, I guess back in a normal world of Chazal, Ima loy menashia bra. But again, there's also the din over here. You're not leaving it in. You're leaving it in someone else's house. Certainly a different story. Says the Gemara, a story that touches upon this din of Goidrais, Inlem Chazaka, this din of Reish Lakish, this din of Avadim, this din that's teaching us what's the story with movable items. 4 lines from the Y lines. Hainu easy. Goats. Ta'achli chushla ben harda. They ate some barley in Harda. Asa mari chushla tafisna. The owner of the barley came and grabbed the goats. V'avikatayin tuva. And he said that they ate a lot of barley, and therefore he wants to be paid. Amar Avu Shmuel, he paskind, he can claim until the value of the goats. Why could he claim so much? On the first white line, because he could have said, these goats are mine, and he would have had credibility. So if he wants to say they're not mine, but the owner has to pay me for the barley, he can do that till the value of the goats. Ask the Gemara, what second? So how can he claim that he has them? Explains the Gemara, shiny easy. Goats are different. The Mesira Liroya. Goats are different. Why? Because they're given over to a shepherd. They don't just walk around freely. Ask the Gemara, Vika Safro Panya. What do you mean? The morning and the night, goats do roam freely. Says the Gemara, Ben Ardai, Tayoyi Shchichi. Arab thieves are common, and therefore goats go hand to hand, meaning they never let them roam. And therefore, if you have the goats in your hand for any amount of time, that does prove ownership. And that's the reason why in this case, they were able to claim ad kedei demehem for the barley that these goats ate. And we continue with the next section of the Mishnah, which is how to create a cheskes gimel shanim on different types of fields. 3 lines to the bottom. Rabbi Shmuel leimer shleisha chadashim. Says the Gemara, lema nir ika beinayu. Shall we say that we had a machlekes in the Mishnah? Rabbi Shmuel said a field that is watered by rain, you need 3 months in the first year, 3 months in the last year, 12 months in the middle, 18 months. Rav Akiva said, no, 1 month in the first year, 1 month in the last year, 12 months in the middle, 14 months. So says the Gemara, let's make the machlekes between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva. The difference will be, do we say that plowing near is part of the chazaka? And explains the Gemara. Do you Shmuel 7 year lo have a chazaka? The plowing is now part of the chazaka, and therefore Rabbi Shmuel holds you need 3 months in year numbers 1 and 3, because that's when there's actually planting and harvesting happening. Rabbi Kiva Savar, no. Near have chazaka. The fact that you plowed a field is enough, and therefore in that first and third year you plowed a field, and that will create the chazaka. Says the Gemara, V'tizbra, Rabbi Kiva, Ma'ariya Chaydesh. If that is true, then here is a chazaka according to Rabbi Kiva. Why does he say then that you would even need a month? Afilu yoymechanami. As we turn over to Lamed Vavam and Aviz, says the Gemara, if according to Rabbi Kiva, plowing suffices to prove ownership, that you don't need a month, even a day. So explains the Gemara, you're right. Near lo yavi chazaka. So what's the difference in Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Kiva? Rabbi Shmuel requires 3 months in years 1 and 3, and Rabbi Kiva requires only 1. Whether you need to have a fully grown crop or a partially grown crop, Rabbi Shmuel, of course, needs a fully grown crop, which is going to be 3 months. Continues the Gemara Tanu Rabbanan. Let's go a little bit deeper into this din of near. Near eino chazaka v'yeshaymer ma'aveh chazaka. It's a machlokes whether the plowing can be utilized as the chazaka. Says the Gemara, man yeshaymer Rav Chisda Rav Haki Tanya neira shana v'zara beis v'zara shana eino chazaka. Says the Braisa, if he plowed for 1 year, planted it for 2 years. Neira shnayim v'zara shana, he plowed for 2 years and he planted for 1 year, eino chazaka. Rav Acha Amar Arezu chazaka, that just plowing is enough. Amar Rav Ashi Shalta Kol Gedali Ador. I asked all the Gedalim Amruli near Harezu chazaka. Amar Le Rabbi B'ler Rav Nachman my taima. Why? Lemaisa. Demandama near Avit chazaka, because lo yavid inish the krivu le la'ara v'shasik. The reason is no one lets someone plow their field and is quiet. You see a guy in your backyard. It's true he's not planting and harvesting, but he's sitting there plowing the field. That itself is enough to evoke a macha. And if he didn't, then it does create a chazaka. Says Mar, okay. So what about the other opinion? Oh my taima demandama near lo yavid chazaka. What about those that argue that near is not a chazaka? Explains the Gemara, Meima Amar, Kol Shiava V'Shiava D'Karva L'Ayil Bei. You know why? Because the owner says, no, let him go. He's doing good for me. And therefore, it doesn't bother him to let someone else plow until he starts to plant, etc. So what's the halacha? Shachla b'nei fum nehara l'Rav Nachman bar Rav Chisda. We're on Lamed Vavam Beis, about 15 lines down. The first one line is Rav Chisda Yalmdinu Rabbeinu. Nir ave chazaka or lo ave chazaka. What is the Maisa? Amar leho Rav Acha v'chol gedali adar amir nir areu ze chazaka. It's a chazaka. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Rabusa lemechshav gavra. Says Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, is it so great to list names? Is it right that near should be a chazaka just because Kol Gedali Adar say that? I'll tell you other names. If it's a name game, I'll tell you more names. So what's going on over here? Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Kiva Masnisani. Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva says the Gemara, it's a Mishnah that near lo yavi chazaka. That's our Mishnah. Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Akiva, 18 months, 14 months, 3 in the beginning, 3 at the end, 1 in the beginning, 1 at the end. And as we explained, that's not a machlokes about near. Why? Because then it would be afilu yoymech. I'd rather argue about a large crop or a small crop. So that's where we see Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva near lo yavi chazaka. Rav Maihi. Where do we see that Rav holds near lo yavi chazaka? Damar Rav Yehuda, Damar Rav Zud, Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Akiva. V'chacham Aimer chazkes gimoshanim miyayim liyayim. Near delay, that near would not be a chazaka. So that's opinion number 3. So Shmuel, Rabbi Kiva, Rav. Now says Gemara Shmuel. Where do we see Shmuel? It's not a chazaka. Shmuel, Mahi, Dam Rabbi Yudam or Shmuel. So different Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Akiva, Chachamim Aimrim. You have to plow, you have to harvest, you have to crop the crop, you have to pick 3 full crops. My beinayu, what's the difference between Rav and Shmuel? Dekel, Naira, Ika, beinayu. The difference is going to be a young date tree. So it's interesting that the Gemara is really leaving off on a cliffhanger over here. That the question was posed, is Nira Chazaka? The Gemara responded, they asked, Yaldeinu Rabbeinu, what's the din? He responded, Rav Acha v'chol Gedolei Adar, say yeah. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak said, who cares, Kol Gedolei Adar? I'll give you more Gedolim. Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Kiva, Rav and Shmuel. And the Gemara leaves it at that. Seemingly a bit of a weight of machlekes. We'll pick it up from here. B'siyata dishmaya.